Today we're diving into how British rock bands didn't just participate in the mod subculture, they literally created and shaped it into a global phenomenon that's still influencing fashion and music today. But here's the controversial part. Some of these legendary mod bands actually hated the label and tried desperately to escape it. And wait until you hear about the band that was completely manufactured as mods overnight by their manager. It's going to blow your mind. Plus, I'll reveal which iconic group's rebellion against mod culture accidentally made them even more influential. So let's jump into it.
I hope I die before I get old. Talking about my generation. Can't explain my blameless love. Try to say it to you.
Let's start with the band that literally defined what mod music could be, The Who. But before we dive into their explosive impact, let me ask you this. What would you do if your manager completely changed your image overnight to chase a trend? Because that's exactly what happened to The Who, and it changed music history forever. Pete Townshend, Roger Daltrey, John Entwistle, and Keith Moon weren't originally mods at all. They were just another struggling beat group in 1964 London, trying to catch the wave that the Beatles had started. But their manager Kit Lambert saw something different. He looked at the mod scene exploding across London's clubs. Kids in sharp Italian suits riding customized Vespa scooters, dancing to American R&B and Jamaican ska, and realized these mods needed their own soundtrack. So Lambert made a decision that changed music history forever. The Who were going to become the ultimate mod band, whether they liked it or not. And here's the crazy part. Townshend later admitted they became mods overnight. Literally. One day they had long hair and casual clothes. The next day they were sharp-suited, scooter-riding modernists with Union Jack jackets and RAF roundel designs. But here's where it gets interesting. They didn't just adopt the look. They channeled the mod attitude into their music like no one had ever done before. My Generation wasn't just a song. It was a manifesto. When Daltrey snarled, "I hope I die before I get old," he was speaking for every mod who refused to become their boring, war-scarred parents.
I hope I die before I get old. Talking about my generation.
Now, you might be wondering, how did this manufactured image actually work? Well, the aggressive, overdriven sound they called maximum R&B was unlike anything anyone had heard. Townshend's power chords, Moon's explosive drumming, Entwistle's thundering bass. This was mod music for mod kids, and it was absolutely revolutionary.
Can't explain my blameless love. Try to say it to you.
Their fashion choices became just as influential as their music. Those Union Jack blazers, the sharp mod suits, the way they moved on stage, everything was calculated to represent mod sophistication with rock and roll rebellion. They proved that mods could be both stylish and dangerous, both sophisticated and explosive.
Things could work out just like I want them.
While the Who were manufactured mods, the Small Faces were the real deal. But here's what's fascinating. Which do you think had more impact on mod culture? The authentic mods or the manufactured ones? The answer might surprise you, and I'll reveal it in just a moment. Steve Marriott, Ronnie Lane, Kenny Jones, and Ian McLagan came straight out of East London's mod scene, and you could hear it in every note they played. These guys weren't just playing mod music, they were living it. Marriott's voice was pure blue-eyed soul, directly influenced by the American R&B records that mods worshipped in all-night dance sessions. Their fashion sense was impeccable and authentic. While other bands hired stylists, the Small Faces knew exactly how a mod should dress because they were mods. Sharp three-button suits with narrow lapels, Fred Perry polo shirts, Ben Sherman button-downs, and those crucial details that separated real mods from weekend wannabes. But here's what made them special. Their music captured something The Who couldn't: the soul of mod culture.
Things could work out just like I want them.
All or Nothing became an anthem for the mod philosophy. You either committed completely to the lifestyle or you weren't really a mod at all. Tin Soldier, with its Hammond organ and soul-influenced vocals, showed how British bands could take American R&B and make it distinctly their own. Now, remember that question about authentic versus manufactured? Here's the shocking truth. Both approaches worked, but for different reasons. The Small Faces gave mods authenticity and credibility, while The Who gave them power and rebellion. Together, they created the complete mod sound. Their 1967 album, There Are But Four Small Faces, was a masterclass in mod sophistication. They mixed Hammond organ-soaked R&B with psychedelic experimentation, proving that mods weren't stuck in the past, they were always looking for the next modern sound. But here's something that's going to blow your mind about how deep mod culture really went. Ray Davies and the Kinks took a completely different approach to the mod phenomenon, and it's one that changed everything. But first, let me ask you this. Can you influence a culture more by being part of it or by observing it from the outside? The Kinks proved it might be the latter. Instead of becoming mods themselves, they became the movement's greatest observers, critics, and chroniclers. And in doing so, they created some of the most insightful commentary on British youth culture ever recorded. Dedicated follower of fashion, was both celebration and savage satire of mod culture. Davies captured the obsessive attention to detail that defined the movement. The way mods would spend their entire weekly wages on the perfect shirt, the way they'd travel across London to find the exact right shade of socks. But here's what's brilliant about Davies' approach. He also highlighted the anxiety beneath all that style. The song's lyrics painted a picture of someone desperately trying to stay ahead of fashion trends, constantly worried about being left behind. One week, he's in polka dots. The next week, he is in stripes. Davies understood that the mod obsession with being modern was also a kind of prison.
Oh, yes, he is.
Now, you might be thinking, if the Kinks weren't mods, how did they influence mod fashion? Well, their sharp, tailored look influenced how British bands should dress. Davies' perfectly cut hair, the band's coordinated outfits, their attention to visual presentation, all of this fed into the mod aesthetic of precision and style. Songs like Well-Respected Man dissected the class tensions that drove many working-class kids to reinvent themselves as mods. Davies understood that beneath all the Italian suits and scooter customization was a deep desire to escape the limitations of British class society. But wait until you hear about the band that accidentally influenced mod culture while trying to do something completely different. Here's something that's going to shock you about the Beatles and mod culture, and it reveals something fascinating about how cultural movements really spread. Are you ready for this? The Beatles weren't really mods at all, but their accidental influence on mod culture was absolutely massive. When Brian Epstein cleaned up their image in 1962, trading their leather jackets and greased back hair for suits and mop tops, he wasn't trying to create a mod statement. He was trying to make them acceptable to mainstream audiences and television producers. But here's where it gets interesting, Cloud. Sometimes the biggest cultural impacts are completely unintentional. Suddenly, sharp suits and distinctive haircuts were everywhere. The Beatles proved that British style could conquer the world, and mods took notice. Their early look, the collarless jackets, the slim-fit trousers, the Chelsea boots, became part of the mod uniform without them even trying. Now, here's the crazy part. When the Beatles appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1964, they were essentially broadcasting mod fashion to 73 million Americans. They didn't know it, but they were turning mod from a British subculture into a global phenomenon. The Beatles' success opened the floodgates for British bands, and many of them rode the mod wave to international stardom. They proved that British youth culture wasn't just a local phenomenon, it was an export that the world wanted to buy. But here's the ironic twist that's going to blow your mind. As the Beatles evolved musically, moving towards psychedelia and experimental sounds, they actually helped kill the original mod movement. By 1967, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band represented everything the mods had originally rebelled against.
Sang out a tune, would you stand up and walk out on me?
Speaking of rebellion, wait until you hear about the Rolling Stones' complicated relationship with mod culture.
Well,
The Rolling Stones had the most complicated relationship with mod culture of any band we've discussed, and it reveals something crucial about how subcultures really work. Here's the question: can you influence a movement while simultaneously rejecting it? The Stones proved you absolutely can. In their early days, they were regular performers at mod venues like the Crawdaddy Club in Richmond, where their blues-heavy sound attracted devoted mod followers who appreciated their authentic approach to American R&B. But here's what made them different. The Stones were never quite mods in the traditional sense. While mods prized cleanliness and sharp tailoring, the Stones cultivated a deliberately scruffy, dangerous image. Mick Jagger's wild stage presence and the band's longer hair set them apart from the precise, controlled aesthetic that most mod bands maintained. But here's where it gets fascinating. Their influence on mod culture was undeniable despite this rejection. Their early albums were filled with covers of American blues and R&B songs that mods had been dancing to in clubs for years. Songs like Route 66 and Not Fade Away. Were already mod favorites before the Stones recorded them. Now, here's what's brilliant about the Stones' approach. They proved that mod music didn't have to be polite or sophisticated. Their raw sexual energy showed that you could take the mod love of American black music and make it dangerous, rebellious, and distinctly British. Their fashion influence was more subtle, but equally important. Jagger's androgynous style, his attention to stage clothes, and the band's overall visual presentation showed that rock stars could be fashion icons, even if they weren't wearing traditional mod suits. But here's something that's going to surprise you about how all these bands' influence lasted way beyond the 1960s. The influence of these bands on mod culture didn't end in the 1960s, and here's why that matters for understanding music history. Cultural movements don't just die, they evolve, and sometimes they come back stronger than ever. The late 1970s saw a massive mod revival led by Paul Weller and The Jam, who understood something crucial. Mod wasn't just about nostalgia, it was about maintaining standards in a world that seemed to be falling apart. Weller looked at the punk explosion around him and said, "We can be rebellious and still look sharp." The Jam's albums like All Mod Cons proved that mod music could evolve while staying true to its core values. Weller's sharp suits and precise songwriting inspired a new generation of bands and fans who saw mod as a timeless approach to style and music. But here's what's really fascinating. The two-tone ska revival of the late 1970s and early 1980s also had deep connections to mod culture. Bands like The Specials, Madness, and The Beat drew on the same Jamaican influences that had inspired the original mods, creating a new fusion that spoke to Britain's changing multicultural identity. This proves something important about the bands we've discussed today. Their influence wasn't just about the 1960s. They created a template for how music and fashion could work together that's still being used today. And there you have it, how British rock bands shaped mod subculture forever. From The Who's manufactured rebellion to the Small Faces' authentic soul, from the Kinks' social commentary to the Beatles' accidental influence, these bands didn't just soundtrack a movement, they created it. But here's that shocking revelation I promised at the beginning. The Who actually hated being called a mod band for most of their career. Pete Townshend spent years trying to escape the label, feeling it limited their artistic growth. And that overnight transformation. Kit Lambert literally took them to the barber, bought them new clothes, and reinvented their entire image in a single weekend. Talk about the power of good management. The mod subculture proved that music and fashion aren't separate art forms. They're part of the same creative expression. These British bands understood that how you look is just as important as how you sound, and that lesson is still influencing artists today. What do you think about their impact on mod culture? Which band do you think was most influential? The authentic mods or the manufactured ones? Drop a comment and let me know. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, subscribe for more music history content, and I'll see you in the next one.